They did not arrive as mere soldiers. They moved like shadows of the dead, specters bearing the memory of the fallen. 10 long years had passed since that fateful day at Thermopylae, when Leonidas and his 300 Spartans fell heroically before the Persian army. 10 years in which Sparta had mourned, trained, and tempered every young man with the iron of discipline and the fire of vengeance. Now an army of 10,000 Spartan warriors marched, but not to protect their land. They marched to avenge it. Each step echoed history, recalling that narrow pass where their ancestors had faced the most formidable power the ancient world had ever known. The Persians, confident and arrogant, had believed that with the death of Leonidas and his men, the Spartan spirit would be extinguished. They believed that Greece, divided and weakened, was destined to submit. But memory is a powerful weapon, and the memory of Sparta had not faded. At Plataea, the Spartans were not fighting simply for territory or survival. They were fighting for vengeance, for justice, for an oath sworn in blood and courage that time had not erased. The year was 479 BC. Greece was on the brink of destruction. The vast Persian Empire under King Xerxes had ravaged cities, burned Athens, and left Thermopylae bathed in Spartan blood. After these victories, Xerxes returned to Persia, convinced that Greece was defeated, leaving behind his most trusted general, Mardonius, with the mission of completing the conquest. What Persia failed to foresee was that Sparta had not forgotten, and that the pain of a nation could be transformed into a weapon more fearsome than any army. The smoke from Thermopylae still hung over Greece like a specter, a stark reminder of the past tragedy. Families whispered the names of the fallen heroes: Leonidas, the 300, and the few survivors. But legends alone could not halt empires. The Persians advanced with confidence, unaware that in the quietest corners of Sparta, something far more dangerous than any army was brewing: the simmering fury of a humiliated people. Mothers mourning their fallen sons sharpened the spears of the survivors. Fathers buried their warriors without breaking, preparing the young for a war that was no longer a matter of life and death, but of justice and honor. In every home, at every training exercise, the same oath was repeated: Thermopylae will be avenged. Meanwhile, in Greece, Mardonius and his army remained confident. They thought they could subdue a divided Greece with promises of peace and tribute. Their messages were met with a silence that hurt more than any sword. The Spartans would not kneel, and the Athenians would not yield their pride. 10,000 Spartan men, elites hardened by discipline and pain, marched north. There were no shouts or celebrations, only scarlet cloaks billowing like blood spilled years before, and a purpose that overcame all fear: vengeance. At the head marched Pausanias, Spartan regent and bearer of Leonidas's legacy. He gave no speeches nor sought inspiration in words. Sparta needed no oratory, only faith and determination. And then the unexpected happened. Greece united. Athens, Corinth, Megara, and other cities sent their men to form an army of more than 70,000 hoplites who would assemble at Plataea. They were no longer rival cities. They had become a single wall of shields and spears, a united front bound by memory, anger, and the hope of a victory that would redeem lost honor. The Persians surveyed the plain of Plataea with satisfaction. For Mardonius, the terrain was perfect, wide open and conducive to numerical superiority and light cavalry, which could easily outflank the enemy. Persian archers, squadrons of troops from all regions of the empire, and foreign forces from distant corners of the known world lined up, confident that victory was assured. But Persia, once again, had underestimated the Greeks. It was not their numbers or their gold that gave them power, but the unity and discipline forged by generations of suffering and training. As the sun set over the Persian camp, the generals feasted and celebrated, certain that the next morning they would see the Greeks on their knees. Torches illuminated richly decorated tents, and the air was filled with music and laughter that resonated with the arrogance of those who believe the world belongs to them. Across the plain, the Greek camp was shrouded in absolute silence. No singing, no laughter, no revelry. Only the clang of armor fastening, shields being inspected, spears being sharpened. There was no fear there, only an iron, unwavering purpose. Every man knew he marched not for glory or riches, but to fulfill a promise written in blood and pain. At dawn, the first movements began. The Persian cavalry charged swiftly, like a dark river of hooves and lances, raising dust that blanketed the plain. Arrows whistled through the air, seeking to pierce the Greek ranks. Yet the hoplites stood firm, their shields interlocked, forming a wall that seemed made of solid bronze. Every Persian attack met the same resistance, an immovable wall that knew no panic. The Spartans advanced only when ordered, with a precision that transformed every movement into an act of martial art and military tactics. Mardonius, confident, watched the scene, certain that fatigue and confusion would soon break the Greeks. His cavalry continued its relentless attacks, archers fired without pause, and auxiliary troops from across the empire formed endless waves. But the Spartans had a plan that Persia could never foresee. They did not launch a rash attack. They waited for the precise moment, the instant when enemy arrogance would meet discipline. Hours passed as the sun climbed higher, scorching the plain and exhausting horses and men alike. The Persians began to show signs of weariness, while the Greeks' lethal composure remained unbroken. It was then that Pausanias raised his spear and gave the signal. The Spartans advanced like a red tide engulfing the field. There were no shouts, no chaos, only firm, measured, relentless steps. The Persian cavalry tried to halt them, but the force of Greek discipline and coordination was too great. They crashed against the bronze wall like waves against a cliff, shattering without creating a breach. The Spartan right wing changed course with surgical precision, heading straight for the heart of the Persian command. Mardonius. The Spartans were not seeking to destroy the entire Persian army. They sought to decapitate it, to eliminate the mind that guided the enemy, just as Alexander would do centuries later. When a Spartan warrior's spear pierced Mardonius's guard, the impact was more than physical, it was symbolic. Each blow represented the memory of those who had fallen at Thermopylae, each raised shield a reminder of Leonidas and his men. With Mardonius's fall, the once feared Persian army crumbled like dry wood under a hammer. Fear gripped them. Disoriented soldiers ran aimlessly, while the Greek war drums beat a steady, calculated march. There was no longer despair among the Greeks, only a silent justice unfolding step by step. With Mardonius defeated, the Persian resistance began to crumble rapidly. What had once been a vast and disciplined army descended into chaos. Soldiers ran in all directions, shoving one another, leaving weapons, chariots, and standards behind, while the Greeks advanced methodically and resolutely. Every Spartan step was reminiscent of Thermopylae, every spear thrust an act of justice for their fallen, and every shield raised a wall, crushing Persian morale. The assault on the Persian camp was relentless. The Greeks were not out to plunder. Their purpose was not wealth or material glory. Each tent brought down, each banner lowered, represented a piece of Persian humiliation and the restored honor of Greece. The Persian archers took refuge in high positions, unleashing desperate volleys, but the hoplites' coordination and Spartan discipline rendered their efforts futile gestures of resistance. One by one, the Persian standards fell, and the camp, a symbol of the empire's might, burned with smoke and roar. Among the ruins, the Greeks found Mardonius's tent, still intact, filled with gold, jewels, and treasures that symbolized Persian arrogance. Before it, the Spartans raised their shields and gazed at the stark contrast with the simplicity of their ancestors. Leonidas had died without riches, without palaces, but with honor and a spear in his hand. That simplicity, that unwavering courage, proved more powerful than all the gold in the world. The Greeks needed nothing more. Justice had been served. The victory at Plataea was not merely a military triumph, but a strategic and symbolic blow that marked the end of Persian ambitions in Greece. The invasion that had begun with pride and promises of conquest ended in ashes, and the most powerful empire of antiquity was forced to retreat. Sparta and its allies demonstrated that discipline, unity, and resolve could overcome the wealth, numbers, and arrogance of a seemingly invincible enemy. While the Greeks gathered their dead with honor, the Persians lay scattered, nameless, confused, and defeated. Silence replaced the thunder of the Persian drums, and over the plain of Plataea waved the Greek standards, symbols of a triumph not of ambition, but of justice and remembrance. From that day forward, the Persian dream of conquering the West was shattered. Xerxes, the king of Persia, received news of the utter defeat. His generals dead, his elite troops vanished, and his empire humiliated before those he had once underestimated. Sparta, however, did not celebrate with grand festivals or ostentatious monuments. Its message was simple and firm, etched in stone for posterity. Here, the Greeks fought and broke Persian power. There was no need for speeches, only deeds. Plataea became much more than a battle. It was a warning written in blood and iron, a reminder that even the greatest empire could fall to those who fought not for wealth or conquest, but for their home and their honor. From that day forward, the name of Sparta transcended its origins as a symbol of resistance and unity. The Greeks had forged a legacy that would endure for centuries, reminding the world that true strength is not always measured in gold or numbers, but in discipline, courage, and unwavering will. Every story of resistance, every confrontation with adversity, bore the imprint of Plataea. Every generation that heard the tale of that battle understood that bravery and unity could change the course of history. Thus, the war ended, not with a roar of celebration, but with the certainty that justice had prevailed. The invaders had withdrawn, and Greek liberty remained intact, cemented in the blood of those who fought not only to survive but to honor their past and secure a future for their children. Plataea was more than a victory. It was the culmination of a Spartan legacy, an eternal reminder that the human spirit, when united in purpose and discipline, can withstand even the most formidable enemy. And so, as the dust settled on the plain and the echoes of battle faded, the Spartans raised no trophies and sang no victory songs. They left only one clear message: the will to resist and defend justice is more powerful than any empire, and from that day forward, Persia never again challenged Greece. Plataea became legend, and the name of Sparta, an eternal symbol of resistance and honor. Beyond the din of battle, Plataea offered lessons that would resonate for centuries in the art of war. The Greeks had not triumphed solely through valor, but through a combination of discipline, strategy, and coordination among different city-states. The alignment of hoplites in compact formations, known as phalanxes, had been decisive. Each overlapping shield protected its neighbor, each spear advanced with synchronized precision, and the unity transformed thousands of men into a single formidable, almost impenetrable entity. The Persians, accustomed to relying on mobility and numbers, found themselves facing a force that could not be outflanked or broken by frontal assaults or swift flanking maneuvers. The terrain played a crucial role. Plataea, a broad plain near the mountains with limited access for the heavy Persian cavalry, neutralized much of Mardonius's numerical advantage. The Spartans exploited every slope, every natural barrier, to create strategic wedges that divided the enemy and allowed for concentrated attacks. The Persian cavalry, which had previously sown panic in open fields, was now trapped in maneuvers where its speed became a weakness, and each failed charge lowered morale and exhausted both horses and men. Weaponry also made the difference. Spartan hoplites carried spears up to 3 meters long, bronze shields, and breastplates that could withstand arrows and sword blows. In contrast, Persian soldiers relied on lighter armor and long-range composite bows. This allowed them to attack from afar, but when the battle descended into close-quarters combat near the camp, their numerical superiority became irrelevant against Greek discipline and coordination. Every Spartan spear could pierce Persian formations, and every shield wall absorbed the momentum of enemy charges. The battle became a clash of concepts: mobility versus discipline, improvisation versus meticulous training, arrogance versus strategy. The assault on the Persian camp was an example of advanced warfare tactics. The Greeks didn't just break through lines. They targeted the heart of the command. The elimination of Mardonius completely disorganized the enemy army, demonstrating the importance of focused leadership and clear strategic objectives. This type of direct attack on the enemy command would become a studied principle centuries later, applied by generals like Alexander the Great and Hannibal, who understood that the fall of the leader could bring down even the most powerful army. The Battle of Plataea also solidified an unexpected alliance between Greek cities previously divided by historical rivalries. Athens, Corinth, Megara, and Sparta had learned that cooperation and unity could overcome any external threat. This experience laid the groundwork for later coalitions in Greece and demonstrated that diplomacy and mutual trust could be as decisive as military force. When the smoke of battle cleared and the Greeks gathered their dead and wounded, the meaning of the victory became clear. They had not only defeated an army, but had protected Greek culture, freedom, and identity from Persian expansion. The lesson was clear. Even the largest, richest, and most powerful empire could be defeated by the determination of a united people, aware of their history and resolved to protect their legacy. Ultimately, Plataea became a symbol and a warning to all empires that underestimated the human will. Wealth and arrogance were irrelevant. Memory, discipline, and unity could defeat any adversary. Sparta, with its legacy of struggle and honor, demonstrated that true strength was not measured in numbers, but in purpose. The victory at Plataea was not only a military triumph, but a lesson for posterity. Resistance grounded in justice, memory, and unity could change the course of history. And so, the story of Sparta reminds us that true strength lies not in wealth, numbers, or arrogance, but in the unity, discipline, and will of those who fight for something greater than themselves. Sparta taught the world that memory and honor can change the course of history, and that even the mightiest empires can fall before the determination of those who refuse to surrender. If you think the story ends here, you're wrong. What happened at Plataea is just one of the many forgotten moments that defined the ancient world, and there are secrets, strategies, and heroes still waiting to be discovered. Subscribe and join us for the next story, where we'll explore battles, tactics, and lessons that shaped history forever. Because history isn't just told, it's lived.